Have you ever pondered the origins of fashion? When did this universal language first make its appearance? In the grand tapestry of human history, the origins of fashion can be traced back to the day when humans first began to wear clothes. Imagine our ancestors, thousands upon thousands of years ago, adorning themselves with garments crafted from the simplest of materials: plants, animal skins, and even bones. These were not mere drapery, but rudimentary expressions of style and functionality. The first whispers of a language that would evolve to speak volumes about our identity, status, and culture. This primal era of fashion was not dictated by trends or designers, but by the raw necessities of survival. Clothing served as protection against the elements, a shield in the harsh dance of predator and prey, and a badge of belonging within tribal communities. And yet, even in this primitive stage, we can see the seeds of fashion taking root. Each tribe, each community had its own distinct style, its own unique way of wearing and decorating these primal garments. As centuries rolled into millennia, we began to see a shift. The mid-19th century marked a transformational era where the division between haute couture and ready-to-wear did not really exist. The most basic pieces of female clothing were made to measure by dressmakers and seamstresses, dealing directly with the client. Clothing was patterned, sewn, and tailored right in the household, a far cry from the mass-produced, ready-to-wear garments we're familiar with today. The emergence of storefronts selling ready-to-wear clothing marked a pivotal moment in fashion history. No longer was clothing an intimate domestic task, but a commodity to be bought and sold. This shift not only changed how we create and consume fashion, but also began to shape the very fabric of our society. So the seeds of fashion were sown right when humans started covering themselves. But the blossoming of this industry was still centuries away. And as we delve deeper into the history of fashion, we find that it is not a frivolous pursuit, but a mirror reflecting our evolution as a species, our progress as societies, and our journey as individuals. Ever wondered how the division between haute couture and ready-to-wear came about? Well, let's take a stroll down the fashion memory lane. Before the mid-19th century, fashion was a bespoke affair. The most basic pieces of female clothing were tailored to individual clients by dressmakers and seamstresses. Every stitch, every seam was a labor of love, carefully crafted to fit like a second skin. In those days, fashion was not a mass-produced commodity, but a personalized service. Clothing was patterned, sewn, and tailored within the comfort of one's own home. It was a domestic task, a part of the household workload, and an integral part of life. This bespoke era was the precursor to what we now know as haute couture, the pinnacle of fashion, where every garment is tailored to fit one person and one person only. Then came a revolution that changed the fashion landscape forever: the emergence of storefronts selling ready-to-wear clothing. This was a game-changer. Ready-to-wear, or prêt-à-porter as it's known in French, introduced the concept of standardized sizes and mass production to the fashion industry. Suddenly, fashion was no longer confined to the rich or the elite. It became accessible to everyone. Ready-to-wear clothing removed the need for individual tailoring from the domestic workload. It brought convenience, and with convenience came a surge in demand. The fashion industry was no longer just about making clothes, it was about making clothes that could be produced and sold on a large scale. This shift marked the birth of the modern fashion industry, with its seasonal collections and fashion shows. But let's not forget, it was the birth of haute couture that truly elevated fashion to an art form. It highlighted the craft and skill of dressmaking, the creativity and vision of the designer. It was a celebration of individuality, of uniqueness, of luxury. And so the division between haute couture and ready-to-wear was born, shaping the fashion industry as we know it today. The storefronts not only revolutionized the industry, but also sparked a new era of fashion. Haute couture and ready-to-wear, two sides of the same coin, two chapters in the same fashion story. Who would have thought that printed designs from Paris would shape the fashion world? Indeed, the influence of printed designs in the evolution of fashion cannot be understated. It was in the heart of Paris, the world's fashion capital, that this revolution was born. In the early days, fashion was a bespoke affair, with clothing patterned, sewn, and tailored within the confines of the household. But as the 19th century unfolded, a new trend began to emerge: the use of printed designs. These designs, often hailing from Paris, were eagerly anticipated and circulated throughout Europe. Seamstresses, the unsung heroes of the fashion world, played a pivotal role in this transformation. They would interpret these printed patterns, incorporating their own creativity and skill to bring the designs to life. It was through their deft hands and sharp eyes that these intricate designs took shape, adding a new dimension to the world of fashion. The pace of fashion started to accelerate in the 1780s, with the increased publication of French engravings illustrating the latest Paris styles. These engravings were like a window into the world of high fashion, offering a glimpse of the cutting-edge styles sported by the most fashionable figures of the era, usually those at court. This was the spark that ignited a fashion revolution, leading to a rapid evolution of styles and designs. However, the influence of these printed designs wasn't confined to the elite circles of Paris. They began to trickle down to the provinces, where they were eagerly adopted and interpreted by local seamstresses. This marked a shift in the fashion landscape, as these designs, initially a symbol of provincial culture, soon became a badge of the conservative peasant. Indeed, the influence of printed designs has been profound, shaping the evolution of fashion and setting the stage for the dynamic, ever-changing industry we know today. These designs, initially a symbol of provincial culture, soon became a badge of the conservative peasant. At the dawn of the 20th century, fashion magazines began to hold sway over public taste. This was a time when the printed word was king, and glossy, vibrant magazines were the crown jewels. These magazines, filled with richly detailed photographs and illustrations, were not merely informational but inspirational. They served as a window to the world of high fashion, allowing the masses to peek into the glamorous lives of the fashionable elite. Fashion magazines didn't just reflect the trends, they set them. They were the tastemakers, the trendsetters, the arbiters of style. The power of these magazines was immense. They could make or break a trend, elevate a designer to stardom, or consign them to obscurity. They dictated what was in and what was out, what was chic and what was passé. The allure of these magazines was further heightened by the talented illustrators who brought the pages to life. They didn't just draw clothes, they painted a lifestyle. Their illustrations were works of art, brimming with elegance and sophistication. These fashion plates, as they were called, were coveted treasures, eagerly collected and proudly displayed. Among the pantheon of gifted illustrators, several names stand out. Paul Uribe, with his distinctive Art Nouveau style, Georges Lepape, known for his elegant and refined illustrations, Erte, the father of Art Deco, and Georges Barbier, whose work epitomized the glamour and opulence of the Jazz Age. Their illustrations were not just beautiful to look at, but they told a story, capturing the zeitgeist of the era. Perhaps the most famous of these magazines was La Gazette du Bon Ton. Founded in 1912 by Lucien Vogel, it was the epitome of chic. Its pages were filled with the latest trends in fashion and beauty, offering its readers a glimpse into the world of haute couture. The magazine was a hit, and it continued to be published regularly until 1925. Fashion magazines, with their glossy pages and captivating illustrations, have long played a crucial role in shaping our perceptions of style and beauty. They have been, and continue to be, a powerful force in the world of fashion, shaping trends and influencing public taste. Perhaps the most famous of these magazines was La Gazette du Bon Ton, which covered the most recent developments in fashion and beauty. The modern fashion industry as we know it began in the 19th century. This era marked a significant shift in the world of fashion, as it saw the birth of fashion houses run by individual designers. This was a departure from the previous norm where clothing was primarily a household affair or a task for local dressmakers and seamstresses. The establishment of these fashion houses represented a new era of fashion, one where the creation of clothing became an art form. This was a time when fashion designers began to emerge as artists in their own right, creating unique designs that were not only functional but also aesthetically pleasing. One such pioneer was Charles Frederick Worth, a name that would forever change the landscape of the fashion industry. Worth, an English designer, began his fashion career in the mid-19th century in Paris. He was the first designer to introduce the concept of branding in fashion. He started the trend of sewing labels bearing the designer's name into the garments he created, a practice that is now a standard in the fashion industry. Worth's innovation did more than just mark his creations. It marked the beginning of designer fashion. His label became a symbol of quality and style, elevating clothing from mere functionality to a form of self-expression and status. This was a turning point in fashion history. The designer became a figure of authority, a trendsetter, whose creations were sought after by the elite. And so, the modern fashion industry was born. It was no longer about merely clothing oneself. It became about style, self-expression, and status. It became an industry that celebrated individuality and creativity. An industry that, to this day, continues to evolve and influence the way we present ourselves to the world. And that, dear listeners, is how fashion has evolved from simple animal skins to the complex industry we know today. Imagine a world without it.